221 BC. Across the northern plains, smoke drifts from burned villages. A wall of packed earth rises from the dust, stretching beyond sight. Men drag stones through frost. Overseers shout. Drums echo across the mountains. They are told this wall will last 10,000 generations. By dawn, another mile will stand. This is the story of how fear built a monument, and how the monument became a nation. Long before gunpowder or paper, China faced its oldest enemy, the horizon itself. Beyond the northern grasslands rode tribes who lived on horseback, fast, elusive, ungovernable. To farmers of the Yellow River Valley, they seemed born from wind and dust, raiders who appeared, vanished, and returned like seasons. For centuries, kingdoms rose and fell, trying to hold that line between field and frontier. Each built its own defenses, ditches, ramparts, wooden palisades, but none lasted. Only one man would dream of joining them into something that might. What kind of ruler believes he can build a wall to the sky? Qin Shi Huang, the self-proclaimed first emperor, unified China in 221 BC after centuries of war. He standardized writing, currency, and law, and sought to make his new realm permanent through stone and terror. He ordered roads to knit provinces together, canals to feed the army, and a tomb guarded by clay soldiers to follow him into eternity. But unity on paper meant nothing without security at its edge. To the north, the Xiongnu horsemen still raided border towns. Qin Shi Huang decreed that the walls of the defeated kingdoms be joined into one continuous barrier, stretching thousands of li across mountains and deserts. Tens of thousands of soldiers, peasants, and convicts were sent to the frontier. Few returned. The chronicles say their bones became the mortar itself. From the distance of centuries, the Great Wall looks eternal. Up close, it was built one life at a time. Before Qin's command, China was a mosaic of rivals. Zhao, Yan, Qi, each building its own fragment of defense. Some used tamped earth. Others wove reeds and gravel. All crumbled under rain and neglect. These scattered ramparts were never meant as symbols, only as scars of fear carved into the land. When Qin Shi Huang's engineers arrived, they followed the old lines, fusing ruins into new foundations. Every mound of dirt already carried stories: a village lost, a raid repelled, a generation buried in mud. The Great Wall was not born whole. It was stitched from centuries of failure. What united China was not confidence, but exhaustion. The wall was a sigh made solid. Construction stretched from the Gobi Desert in the west to the Liaodong Peninsula in the east. Teams mixed earth with straw, pounded it in layers until it hardened like stone. Fortresses crowned the ridges. Beacon towers rose every few miles, so smoke by day and fire by night could summon help across impossible distances. The emperor never saw the entire wall, but he saw its cost. Taxes soared, crops withered, families starved. The same people who had cheered unification now cursed his name. After his death, rebellions swept the land, and the Qin Dynasty collapsed in barely 15 years. Yet the wall remained, scar and skeleton of an empire that tried to outlast mortality. When the Han Dynasty rose in 206 BC, it inherited both Qin's vision and its ghosts. The new emperors turned the wall from barricade into highway. They extended it westward along the Hexi corridor, protecting the trade caravans that carried silk toward Persia. Watchtowers became customs posts, garrisons became markets. For the first time, the wall was not only defense, it was diplomacy. Envoys rode beneath its shadow, exchanging letters with kingdoms beyond the desert. Gold and glass from the west returned along the same path, proving that a boundary could also be a bridge. Still, the old truth remained. Every empire is defined by what it fears. For the Han, the wall was pride. For those who built it, it was prison. During peace, its gates welcomed traders. During war, those same gates were sealed with iron. Centuries passed. The Tang and Song dynasties brought prosperity, art, and confidence. Trade replaced tribute, poetry replaced paranoia. The frontier quieted as diplomacy and wealth accomplished what walls could not. Merchants from Arabia and Persia came freely to China's ports. Silk and porcelain flowed out to the world. The wall, neglected, began to sink back into sand. Earthworks crumbled. Towers became dens for foxes. The empire had turned its gaze inward, believing that culture, not clay, would hold back the barbarians. It worked for a time. But history has a way of remembering what we forget. Beyond the northern steppes, riders were gathering again, faster, fiercer, and led by a name the wall could not stop. By the 13th century AD, the steppe thundered again. From Mongolia rode a force unlike any China had ever faced. Genghis Khan and his unbroken legions. They moved with the speed of wind, living on horseback, striking where the land itself seemed to open before them. The wall could slow them, but it could not stop them. Stone meant nothing to riders who simply rode around it. Fortresses fell, towns burned, and China's northern frontier collapsed like paper before a storm. When the Mongols finally conquered the empire, they ruled it not as outsiders, but as emperors. The Qin Dynasty. For nearly a century, the conquerors controlled the very civilization that once built walls to keep them out. The barrier that was meant to define China now defined its absence. An empire of walls had become an empire of riders. When the Mongols were expelled in 1368 AD, the Ming Dynasty rose with a vow: never again. They rebuilt the wall from ruin, this time not of packed earth, but of brick and stone, mortared with lime and rice flour, reinforced with battlements and watchtowers. From the Bahai Sea to the Gobi Desert, nearly 5,500 miles of fortifications took shape, following the mountain ridges like a scar stitched across time. Beacon towers sent smoke by day and fire by night, relaying messages faster than any messenger could ride. Behind them, garrisons stood ready, soldiers, farmers, their families, entire villages built into the wall's spine. The Ming version became the one the world would remember. Red, resilient, vast enough to be mistaken for a dragon's back. It was both fortress and theater, a monument built as much for psychology as for defense. Was it meant to keep enemies out, or to convince the empire itself that it was safe? For those who lived upon it, the wall was not a wonder. It was home and hardship. In winter, the wind sliced through armor and cloth. In summer, heat shimmered off the bricks until iron burned to the touch. Soldiers guarded narrow passes, couriers galloped between beacon towers, and farmers cultivated narrow strips of dry land in its shadow. Each garrison carried its own rhythm: drills at dawn, patrols at dusk, silence at night broken only by the cry of wolves. Messages moved by fire and drum, a primitive telegraph beating across mountains. Visitors today see stone and imagination. Those who built it saw exhaustion and duty. In truth, the wall protected more than land. It protected the idea of China. Over centuries, the wall faded into legend. Travelers from the West spoke of it as if it were one endless serpent winding across the earth. Poets compared it to heaven's Milky Way, unreachable, eternal. But for most of history, it was broken, buried, rebuilt, and forgotten again. There was never one great wall, only many walls, overlapping like memories. The myth of unity came later, shaped by emperors who needed symbols more than soldiers. To rule China was to inherit its fears, and to promise they would never return. The wall became proof of that promise, a spine of endurance running through the centuries. When foreign explorers arrived in the 19th century, they found it half buried under centuries of dust. Villagers scavenged bricks for homes, farmers plowed over sections long collapsed. Yet to outsiders, it was already legend, a monument equal to the pyramids or Rome's ruins. In the 20th century, archaeologists began to trace its full length, uncovering forgotten stretches through desert and cliff. What they found astonished them. Over 13,000 miles of walls, trenches, and barriers built by dynasties across 2 millennia. Today, satellite images show it snaking across 12 provinces. It is no longer defense, it is declaration. The Great Wall was born from fear, but remembered as pride. Standing upon it now, the wind carries the same song it did 2,000 years ago. Civilizations rise and fall, yet the wall remains. Centuries before the Ming laid their final stones, the riders who first tested these walls had already changed the world. Their leader would carve an empire from the steppe to the sea, reshaping Asia forever. His name was Genghis Khan. Join us on the next episode of Mini History, where we will ride with Genghis himself.